The Dallas Cowboys have looked better than expected through 2 weeks. Should they make a big-time trade? We will get to that next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is Landon McCool. And on today's show, we are answering your Twitter questions, including who are some of the most surprising players through the first 2 games of the Cowboys? How bad is the defense and who is the most to blame for their problems? But Landon, let's start with this first question. And actually, we've got quite a few people here that want to know, do you think the Cowboys should be making a big trade to improve the team now that we know maybe they're a little bit more competitive than we thought?
I think I'm still, you and I had a kind of conversation before the show about this. And I kind of think I'm still in wait and see mode at this point, right? Because I do think you have this window right now where you've got these picks and it's like a valuable thing to kind of have all those picks in a single draft too, because it's not just that you're getting those picks, but also just the ammunition that you can use to move around, to do all kinds of different stuff. So I kind of want to keep my powder dry right now, just until we get a better idea of where this team is, right? Like I think we know that this offense is pretty good. And I think through 2 weeks, you've seen that they could be a top 5 offense, right? Like I think they've kind of shown, certainly through different spurts, they have a balance to this offense that I don't think we've seen in previous years, right? So the vibes are right, I think, at certain parts of the offense, if you feel like things can even out a little bit. On defense, which I think is the area where you feel like you probably need to make this trade.
I would be shocked if it was on offense, right? There's just, I mean, the only position is like running back, I guess, but I mean, Javonte Williams has been, we'll get to Javonte in a second.
We'll get to Javonte Williams.
Yeah. I can't see it being on offense. Let's just put it that way.
I kind of agree. So to me, it's like, I think you still need to figure out a little bit. First of all, you need to give these young guys a little bit more time just to see, right? Just give yourself an opportunity. And also just to see exactly how the rest of this team is. Like, is the coverage to the point where going out and getting a pass rusher actually would make a difference and help and kind of even things out a lot on this defense? To me, like, again, I'm kind of giving my hand here. I think it would be a pass rusher. It would be someone that you would go out and get an elite passer, or someone, an elite cover guy that you feel like could help you on that end. I think that's the area specifically where, if you're going to make a trade for this year, like, that's probably where I would look.
So I have very mixed feelings on this, because my initial reaction is no, like, those picks are to replenish the middle of your roster. And that's the reason you traded Micah Parsons, is because you felt like players 10 through 15 weren't good enough and they were getting too expensive, right? So you need those 4 first-round picks over the next 2 years to fill in the gaps. And you're going to use all of that money that you, quote unquote, saved on Micah Parsons to extend guys like DaRon Bland and Tyler Smith, which is what they've done. However, someone like Trey Hendrickson is very interesting, right? Because I think he will be available. We'll see if that's the case. But with the Bengals losing Joe Burrow for the season, or at least we think the season,
for majority to say the least, right?
I'm not the Locked On Bengals host, but he's not playing this year. I think, and he's on a 1-year deal. I wonder if it would make sense for the Bengals to move him now. Let's say they get a 2nd-round pick. They were asking for a first. If you're the Cowboys, could you make an argument like, hey, he's not Micah Parsons, but he's $15 million a year cheaper. He's had more sacks over the last couple of years. We don't have to pay him as much. And while we get to keep those first-round picks, now we have Trey Hendrickson. We only give up a second, theoretically, and we compare him with Kenny Clark. And now our defense, it's not as good as it was with Micah, but we're better.
Yeah, and you're not making. I mean, I think any trade also would probably need a commitment of or a a deal behind it. I would assume, but maybe not. Maybe we could just work out a deal where you just are simply trading him, and maybe that comes with part of the haggling that you're making with the Bengals.
I mean,
right?
I think that would be the thing. If you could trade, let's say you trade for him and you give him a 3-year deal at make up the number 35 million a year. Okay, that's a lot of money, but that's $10 million less per year that you were planning on giving Micah.
Yeah, and on top of that, you still get the first round draft picks and Kenny Clark, which again, like I know felt like a kind of a joke part of this trade when Micah Parsons trade originally went down, but he's been an incredible player for
He
you.
might be your best defender.
And I think it also makes this trade, also this kind of trade, make some sense because suddenly you seemingly have solved a lot of your run defense problem, at least the interior rush part. You get maybe 2/3 of the pass rush back from Micah Parsons with Hendrickson, at least for this year. And maybe who knows beyond how much longer a 30-year-old Hendrickson's going to continue to perform, right? And you still get the picks as we mentioned. So, like, look, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and even after that defend Parsons trade, but I think it makes some sense if you feel like you've got a team to, make that happen. I still think that that's the thing that you and I agree on, right? That I'm still in wait and see mode for at least a couple more weeks.
And
right?
that's what I need to see them beat some good teams that maybe not ever, like, for example, beating Chicago. If they go out and they beat Chicago in Chicago, I think I would be more apt to do a trade like that. But I think my instincts are you need these picks to get some young players and start this kind of new era of the roster. And I think the thing I keep coming back to is even with Trey Hendrickson on the roster, are they good enough to make it to the playoffs? Are they good enough to be a Super Bowl contender? Probably not. But then again, maybe Trey Hendrickson is the difference in the Philadelphia game. And maybe that is all you need.
I don't know why not. I mean, honestly, like because I mean, again, I think if anything can happen with these teams, and you're still hoping for development in other areas of the team, if you give this shot a little bit of veteran and pass rush, I mean, real pass rush, because I can hear folks say, "What about Clowney? What about Clowney?" Guys, you're giving Clowney like $4 million,
not even
or something,
not even.
Yeah, so it's like you can just cut him if you want. Like it's totally fine. Like. I just think that with this kind of situation, it's a real pass rusher. It's not Micah Parsons, but it's in that range of
pro pass rusher from last year, right?
And production wise, he's produced more than Micah Parsons, at least on that front, like
on the sack part of it. Yeah, There's also part of me that thinks, hey, if you're trading a first or second round pick, I think you would want to try to find a player that has some cheap years left. Right. And like this is what the Cowboys have done before when they traded for Amari Cooper. They had, cheap years available. They traded for George Pickens, who has this 2025 season where he's costing you nothing. Like that's the way to probably do it. I have a hard time seeing the Cowboys giving up a high round pick and having a pay a player immediately $30+ million a year who's in his 30s. But that's where I've been going through all these rosters trying to find another name. And it's just too hard going into week 3 because everybody or almost everybody thinks they still have a chance to make the playoffs or be in contenders. 2 weeks from now, Landon, I promise you, 2 weeks from now, you'll have a better idea of which teams could potentially be sellers by the deadline.
Last thing I'll say, I honestly think that I'm pushing back on that because I think we're through the looking glass at this point, right? With Jerry. And I think that it's about trying to prove that he was right about the Micah Parsons trade.
Well, that part of it, yes. Yeah.
To me, I think that would be enough to convince Jerry to get on board with a trade like this. Whether that's the right reason to get this deal done or not, maybe at least it is a reason that this deal gets done.
All right, let's talk about some players that have been really surprising through the first 2 weeks of the season and a couple that have been major disappointments. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's moving the game forward for those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. These are the moments that do more than just put points on the board. They move crowds, they move culture, and they keep the game moving forward. And this week's moment that moved the game forward is Brandon Aubrey's 64-yard field goal. to put the Cowboys into overtime. It's crazy when Brandon Aubrey steps up. Like, I have no doubt that he's going to get it there. It's just whether he makes the kick or not. But he was fantastic. He was calm. The Cowboys had complete faith. You even saw guys on the bench. They weren't even getting up because they just knew that he was going to drill the kick. And that is what is giving the Cowboys a positive outlook moving forward. They've got the best kicker in the league. He's fantastic, and he comes through in the clutch, and he keeps fans moving forward. And when you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. The NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium, surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between login screens and prices jumping at checkout. It's incredibly frustrating, but that's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and it's backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price that you see is the price that you pay. I love that the app is super simple. You can see your exact view from your seats in the app before you buy. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way that I've bought tickets in the past. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that is promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go download Game Time today. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This next question comes from Tyler. He wants to know, who has been the most surprising and most disappointing player for the Cowboys through the first 2 weeks of the season?
Okay, so I got a couple on each, honestly. So I think for surprising, we first just got to have a little conversation about Javonte Williams, right? Like, to me, Javonte has been way more than what we expected. I think there was, probably similar expectations when the signing happened for him and Miles Sanders, right? And I think that it's been very clear since training camp has started, all throughout training camp, and obviously through the first 2 weeks, that Javonte Williams is the number one back on this team. And he's performed at a high level. I'm pretty sure at last I checked, he was the number one running back in the league in success rate. I think, or number two.
I think he's fourth right now in success rate, number one in EPA per rush, which isn't bad.
Success rate, we also should talk about this. Success rate is measured two different ways depending on what you like, the traditional success rate, and then also by EPA. So sometimes these numbers get a little jumbled.
But the thing is you use both of them together. That's going to tell you kind of where he's at.
Exactly. So number one and number four, pretty good, right? Yeah. So, and I think that's what we've seen, right? Like, I mean, he had a 30-yard touchdown run that was just beautiful. He's breaking tackles. He's getting more than what's there. I think I don't remember the numbers right off the top of my head, but his rushing yards over expected is very high, or at least it was after the first game. I haven't checked to the second one, but I can't imagine it's not, because he had a 30-yard touchdown run. So again, like, I think just any expectation that you had for Javonte Williams, he seemingly exceeded it. So I'm very excited for him.
There were a lot of really good runs on Sunday, but one of my favorites was there was a 2nd and 29 in overtime. And I think this was the first time the Cowboys got the ball, where they were pretty clearly just trying to get a few yards on second down. And he ends up breaking the run and getting, I think, 20 yards to set up a 3rd and 10. And the Cowboys ultimately didn't convert. But now, instead of being backed up in your own end zone, punting the ball away, Brian Anger hits a monster punt and they pin the Giants down there. And the next play, you have the interception, right? Like, it's just little things like that. He broke a couple tackles on a poorly blocked play, turns into a big field position play. He's just a really hard physical runner. And that's exactly what we've been wanting for the last couple of years.
And I'm going to go ahead and just transition that conversation into another physical guy who's been a huge part of this run game, who in my mind has not gotten enough snaps. Man, Brevin Spanford has been everything we hoped he would be as a run blocker and more. I mean, this last game, I think he only had 10 snaps as a run blocker, but every single one was clinic tape. It was, and it's not even just clinic tape in form, but he's burying dudes. He's putting them on the ground and then he's getting in their face. Man, I love the physicality that this dude plays with, and the way he, is so effective. They've got to find ways to kind of continue to get him more snaps. He was just a small guy that I feel like was worth mentioning because he just doesn't get a ton of snaps.
I got one I wanted to mention. Do you know who the number 9 receiver is right now on Pro Football Focus in terms of their grading? It's not CeeDee Lamb, and it's not George Pickens. It's KaVontae Turpin, and this is one that we talked about all offseason. Like, okay, who's going to be the third receiver? We thought this was going to be a battle between Tolbert and Turpin and Mingo. And it took all of like a week to feel like, no, hey, Turpin's number 3 here, and everybody else is fighting for a job. I know he got banged up in this game, but man, there was like a 4-play sequence early in this game where Turpin got the ball on every single play. He scored a touchdown. They really didn't have any answer for him before he got banged up in this game. But for somebody who was so raw coming to the Cowboys in 2023, who started to play more on offense last year, to a guy that's an actual weapon on offense, it's pretty cool.
Turpin deserves a lot of credit for his own development. It's a long way that he's come in these last few years. So kudos to him. I think Schottenheimer deserves a lot of credit because he actually is the one who I think had the vision for this, even when McCarthy was the coach, and really leaned into it when all of us kind of were like, "Are you crazy? This doesn't feel like this is tenable." You keep pouring more into the Turpin on offense stuff, and the truth of the matter is that all throughout training camp, all of us that were out there at Oxnard were trying to say, like, hey, Turpin is a thing. Like, it's not like they're using him too much for it not to be a thing. And it became clear right away that it was. And I think as the weeks go on, you'll see more handoffs. You'll see more route running. Great. You'll see more, the reverse. The reverse thing is so crazy because it feels like anytime he gets a ball on those jet sweeps, it's an automatic 10 yards. Like, no one can get the angle, at least the first time, right? No one can properly get the angle on him, and he just beats it easily to the corner and gets an easy 10 yards to the sticks. It's crazy.
I mean, it sounds wild, but he's kind of what I thought Tavon Austin would be in the NFL, but he's just a better player. It's wild. A player that's been a little bit disappointing to me, and this is a guy that I was really excited who the Cowboys signed, is Jack Sanborn, coming over from Chicago, from this Matt Eberflus scheme. I thought because of the better defensive tackle play ahead of him with Osa and Kenny Clark and Solomon Thomas, who maybe should have been on the list we just talked about. I think definitely. Sanborn just been bad. Like, I thought you were going to get a physical downhill linebacker, and you're going to have to live with some issues in coverage. I just don't think he's been very good.
Yeah, just real quick, Solly just shutting down an entire drive by making all 4 plays incredible. Yeah, and I agree. Sanborn, it's like we saw Kenneth Murray play poorly in the first week, and that wasn't terribly shocking, but Kenneth Murray really had a good game.
We should mention that because we kind of killed him a little bit last week. It was encouraging to see him play much better this week.
Absolutely. But I think the thing that was discouraging was I felt a lot of the first week you were just like, well, is that also affecting Sanborn's ability to play? Because he didn't really necessarily have a good game. Sanborn also had a pretty bad game this week as well, specifically in coverage, I felt like, right? So, I just think that there is an area where we've continued to ask for the young guys to play a little bit more. Although Clark didn't necessarily have as good a game this week as he did last, I still think you need to start seeing more of these younger guys. Leofow still didn't get enough snaps as far as I'm concerned last week. So let's continue to see more of those guys because Murray is, if he's going to be inconsistent, that's fine. Like at least we can hold off until Overshown comes back. But if Sanborn's just bad, then we can't keep him on the field.
Anybody else you want to mention that's been disappointing? Again, it's a small sample size, so don't overreact. Don't think that these guys can never play better. But who has been disappointing for you?
He's second on the team in pressures or pressure rate, at least behind James Houston, by the way, who another guy that, wow. I mean, but Sam Williams, it's like I've expected a little bit more. I expected more out of Sam Williams than Marshawn Nealon and Donovan Ezraku, right? Because he's a year older than the rest of those guys. He's got more playing times and snaps than those guys, even though he missed a year. And it just feels like he's done some good things in getting pressure, but he hasn't finished anything. There's just too many times when I see him and it feels like he doesn't know how to use his hands. It's just inconsistency on a snap-by-snap basis that I'm seeing with Sam Williams.
All right, let's talk about who is the bigger problem on defense for the Cowboys right now. Is it Matt Eberflus or is it the talent? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure that you are ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love FanDuel because it allows me to bet however I like. Like for me, I love the futures market. Like I want to go see who is the favorite to win each division, who's going to make the playoffs. They have those odds and lines available. I also like to bet on who I think is going to make the Super Bowl, and it's all available on FanDuel. It makes every game even more exciting, whether you're watching your team, the Dallas Cowboys, or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way just to add just a little bit more energy to your Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That is FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. The NFL season is finally here. So for your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL podcast, 2 episodes every single day, 1 in the morning with Tyler Rowland, 1 in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins. It's fantastic. Both shows are incredible. Find the Locked On NFL podcast on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, Landon, this last question comes from Zach. He wants to know, what is the bigger concern right now, the talent on defense or Matt Eberflus, the guy who's calling the defense?
I think to me, you knew what Matt Eberflus was when you hired him as far as like what he was going to be doing. I don't think anything he's been doing has been surprising. I think, if anything, the issue is talent. Like to me, I do think that there are other defensive coordinators that you could bring in with this talent and maybe have slightly more success, right? Like there are guys who could scheme it up a little bit more that could help kind of support this. But I do think that at this point, like the idea was that we were going to play this zone heavy scheme. We were going to have a pass rush that got after people. And the front office decided to kind of flip things around on the defense a little bit, a week before the season. I don't know if you guys heard. So, like, I think that, Eberflus is not the issue because the plan was originally to kind of lean into what he wanted to do. And I think it's a sound plan when you have the horses to run it. But the problem is this defense scales to the talent that it has. And right now, like specifically, they have corners that are not necessarily sticky corner guys, but are good in zone who can jump bad errant passes and make interceptions. But that's kind of reliant on you having the pass rushers to force the issue. And right now, you just don't have the pass rushers to force the issue.
Yeah, I look at it like if you're first week of August, right? If I were to tell you who are your best players on defense, you'd go Micah Parsons, DaRon Bland, maybe, and DeMarvion Overshown. And none of those guys were on the field in week 2 for you, right? I mean, and Parsons isn't coming back, obviously.
Sure.
It really helps to have a dynamic linebacker that can cover all of the middle of the field. So you're not getting, all these little 5-6 yard passes that turn into 12-yard gains. And that happened far too often. And then you have a corner in Bland who can play in the slot, who can play in the outside. He's just not there. So you're playing guys that you picked up on waivers 2 weeks ago, and they're playing 65 snaps. The talent's not good right now. Now, the hope is that once you start getting Bland and Overshown and maybe somebody like Savon Ravel, who Jerry Jones mentioned, could be ready in week 5, I do think it's going to improve, but you're still pretty limited based on what you can do. And so I don't put a lot of the blame on Eberflus. He's trying to make the best of a bad situation right now.
I do think that Eberflus had a good game plan for what they did against the Eagles, right? Like I don't think
against the Eagles, yes,
yeah,
I agree.
I think the Eagles, like I think they had like good, solutions. I think that they are a sound defense in a way that we haven't seen in some other years previous to this. I think that there are still times when there were miscommunications, especially this week, where it felt like the secondary wasn't always on the same page with what was going on. So I do think that there has been some kind of miscommunication. And to me, it's like with that stuff, like, is that a coaching problem or a personnel problem? It's both, right? It's like it's both of those things. So I do think that we're still in early days of a new defensive coordinator, and I think it's important to remember that it's not. So we're dealing with two issues. It's not just necessarily a sudden lack of talent. It's a it's a coordination issue, as not just like defensive coordinator, but a coordination between the players and coaches type of thing. So I do think that stuff will start to smooth out a little bit, hopefully. And then, hopefully you get some more talent, like we talked about, guys coming back, and maybe you add a couple guys through trade or something. So that's the hope, is that the defense scales with talent increased.
Yeah, and we should also remember, like, it usually takes a while for a new defensive coordinator to implement their scheme. Like, I remember last year in week 2, your first home game, the Cowboys gave up 41 to Derek Carr, and they had Micah Parsons in that game, right? Like,
that's right.
It takes a while. Now, it got better as the season went on. So that's the hope here. Now, they don't have Micah Parsons in their back pocket who could wreck things. And honestly, that's one of my takeaways. Like, having guys like Micah and even someone like Dak and CD, they're just force multipliers for your units.
Yes.
They can make everybody better. And having those guys can make life so much easier for everybody and the coaches.
Yeah, and I think that works on a small scale and on a large scale. Like, even for the defense overall, you need that talent to cover up for the moments when the scheme fails, right? And I think the scheme is there to cover up for the moments when the talent fails, right? They have to work hand in glove.
And that's why Landon is advocating for the Cowboys to go out and trade for Trey Hendrickson. Pretty clear.
Right? No, we'll see. I mean, I'm not advocating against. Let's put it that way. Right.
The Bengals really don't ever make trades, so that's the hard part here. I can't even think of the last time the Cowboys and Bengals made a trade, but oh well. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. He is Landon McCool. Follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I am at Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.